Welcome back. Today I'm going to share with you my process as a Camera Club monthly photo competition judge. I created a bit of a system. You know me, I love systems. It's a way that I can try and be as objective as I can with with choosing the best winners for each category. That said, there is a little bit of course, there's going to be some bias as to what I like and what my preferences are in photos. But I try and be as fair and impartial as I can in this process. And I want to share that with you because I'm not sure if you've entered a photography competition in the past. You can look at the results and go, oh, wow. And why did they choose that? And it was actually an experience exactly like that led me to putting together this article that's on my website. Now, I went through the process and I picked a winner that I was not expecting. Like, there were some amazing photos in this group of photos that was given to me to judge. And I thought, this is not going to be a popular decision. I didn't want to back down from that. I didn't want to go, okay, no, I'm going to go the populist kind of route and go, okay, this is going to be well received as a winner, because they probably, I'm not sure whether you're familiar, but a lot of camera clubs, they'll submit their same photos over and over to different judges. And this person probably won already, but going through my process, before I really documented it, I came up with this surprise winner. And I prepared this article for them when I went and said, okay, this is the winner. Now, can you give me 10 minutes to explain? So that's what I'm going to share with you today, and hopefully you'll get a lot out of it. So first we'll have the intro. So the big question is this: how do smartphone photo enthusiasts like us become that creative and confident photographer we desire and deserve to be, creating those beautiful, impactful photos? This podcast will give you the answers. I'm Mike, and welcome to the Smartphone Photography Club. Photo competitions, there's pros and cons. One of the best reasons why you would enter a photo competition is to get some feedback, especially if it's one in a camera club. They're a perfect example, but you do actually get feedback. Competitions where you submit, you've just got to be careful. There's so many dodgy ones online where you actually have to pay an entrance fee to submit your photos. I'm not a fan of those because, yes, you might win a competition and you might get some, feel-good juices running through your body, but I don't know. I have a different take on it. And for me, photography is very much community and sharing your photos with other people that are going to see it, and working with other people. And camera clubs are a great way. I'm a strong advocate for them. They're fantastic because everybody helps each other. There's a real communal aspect to it, and photo competitions are a part of that. And the reason why I would suggest you enter those sort of competitions is because the guest judge will give you some feedback. They'll choose their winner, but typically they'll go around all the entries and give some feedback. That said, the feedback is they've analysed your photo from that perspective. Unlike my smartphone photography transformation 6-week program, my live program online, where I get to know you, you get to know me, and the content is delivered in a flexible, fluid way. Feedback is formative. It's not, I understand the context behind the photo. I understand you, what you're using, what you're trying to achieve. So that sort of feedback is going to always trump feedback in a camera club or photo competition, because they're giving their, yes, it's subjective, it's fantastic. It's always going to be better than feedback from your family and friends who are always going to say, yeah, that's great. An analysis of your photo from somebody at a camera club competition, from somebody who has an understanding and knowledge of sometimes more advanced level understanding of principles and guidelines and that sort of thing, might be able to give you some really valuable feedback. So it's an absolute privilege for me when I get to go to these camera clubs, because number one, and I'm doing this more and more with my industry groups as well, when I'm working with corporate clients, I'm telling my story, which I covered with you guys already, why I started this, and trying to remove that prejudice out there that still exists. And camera clubs, yes, there might be, typically speaking, and being very big generalization here. There's an older demographic in those clubs. They may still hang on to a bit of a prejudice that I had for so long towards the smartphone. So it's a privilege for me to get out there and talk to them, and now talk to them online as well. Just last week, I spoke to a camera club out in Canada, which is amazing. So so I really appreciate those opportunities. That said, with moving on, as a human, I'm acutely aware that when I'm doing these, making these judgments, that like I said, I come with prejudices in my assessments. I make interpretations and assessments and guess. There's a lot of guessing going on, what this person's doing, what they're trying to do, because that photo is the only information that I have, the story, what they're telling and how they're telling it. So a review sometimes from a judge who has all good intentions can sometimes come across as, and we're very careful to be very polite and not abrasive, but sometimes it can come across like, well, no, that's not what I was trying to achieve. So it can leave you a little bit vulnerable and sometimes excited to hear what the judge's thoughts and recommendations, what they have to say. So, like I said, I have a process. The initial sorting process, I have to, because you'll have 30 images and somehow you need to start the process. So what I do is I look at them and go, okay, which ones do nothing for me? Which ones are wow photos? Which ones are kind of stand out for the rest? And that is how I initially sort them from my favorite to right through to my least favorite. Okay. That said, when I get to my least favorite, that doesn't mean they just get discarded, but that's just my initial sorting period process. And then I have a point system. Now this might sound, after all that, and I said it's very subjective, I do have a point system, and you know me, I need systems, I need processes, and this helps me, and this helps come up with and sometimes a surprising result. So I have 5 different stages of the image creation that I'm looking at, and each of those stages I give them points. So each photo that is submitted, maximum points they can get is 15. Okay. Now the 5 stages are photographic intention, number 1, composition, lighting, equipment, and editing. Now, lighting's an interesting one because typically in my own environment, in smartphone photography training, when I'm talking about capture and edit, all this sort of thing, I don't go on about lighting a lot. I don't talk about lighting a lot. That's because we're right into editing, aren't we? And we can paint light into our photos. Doesn't replicate. Yes, I understand golden hour, morning, afternoon light, the low angle. You can get some beautiful images with beautiful lighting. But a lot of it you can recreate with the skills and the techniques that I show you in the editing. So surprisingly, I do put that in there. So intention, composition, lighting, equipment, and editing. And the points that I give them, this might surprise you as well. Intention, 3 points. Composition, 3 points. Lighting, 3 points. Equipment, 2 points. Now equipment, that's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I'm looking at a photo. I don't know what equipment they've used. Sometimes, if it's a electronic photo, then I'll have access to the EXIF, the metadata, and I can see what they've used. That said, use of equipment. So how have they what sort of ISO, aperture, shutter, all that sort of thing. So I'm looking at how they've used their equipment. Is it a grainy photo? Have they used a tripod? Because you can tell some photos where they haven't used the tripod. And then the last one, editing, I give that 4 points. So no surprises there. 4 points for editing. That's the most, because I tell you what, I think sometimes I think that's worth 5, but then I'd have to take a point away from somewhere else or give them a maximum of 16 points. And 15 is just such a lovely round number, isn't it? So that's my philosophy. It's not about the equipment, and I'll probably put more emphasis on the editing side of photography than the equipment, which is no surprise. So number 1, intention. So this is really the difference between a happy snap, recording the scene, and a photo intended for an audience or a viewer. So so basically it's pausing, bring the smartphone out of your pocket or your purse, pausing for a moment, going, what is the motivation here? What's the intention? When my viewer looks at this, what do I want them to see? What do I want them to feel and experience and connect with? That sort of thing. And that kind of gives you clarity around how to set up the photo. So telling a story really assists creating that connection. I talk about emotional connection, and that's where you're tapping into their experiences, life experiences, I guess, that we all share. If you can connect with something, connect a memory that somebody has had as a viewer, that's gold. That's you're halfway there. All right, number 2 was composition. You hear me go on and on about this. I love it. Competition. I have that process, composition stacking, where I take 60 plus techniques, group them into 4 groups. I'll give them to you now. There is the perspective, so the angle, all that sort of thing. Then there's positioning of the subject, positioning of the elements, and then how you make them all speak to each other, how you edit and enhance all that. So composition is a big one for me, and it's one of those things that the more often I deliver these sort of analysis of photos, is feedback. They call it feedback. It's a little bit different in my opinion. Like I said, I can't really give formative feedback, but composition comes up time and time again. It's the most popular piece of feedback that I give, is that now, if you had have done this, if you had have done that, see how that would have changed the whole feeling or directed my view a little differently. So so it's positioning of the subject, other elements, looking for those lines, colors, textures, all that sort of thing. Okay, number 3, lighting. Now, the lighting direction I touched on, the quantity of the light, so afternoon light compared to daylight. Sometimes midday, harsh as sun can produce beautiful shadows. So don't rule that out. It's not a time you can't take photos. But that's what I'm looking for in their photos, is how they've used the light, whether they've used diffused lighting, whether the lighting matches the intention of the photo and supports the composition. Okay, equipment. Now, like I said, I try not to get too focused on that, but I can see people that haven't used their equipment correctly. You can see that in their photos. Editing. Number 5, the last one. This is where you can really enhance the viewer experience. That's what it comes down to, enhancing the viewer experience. It's not about fixing a photo. It's not about making the photo at that stage, because you want to try and get as much of it right in the preparation and capture stage as you can. Editing is where you pull it all together and go, yep, I know why I did that. I'm going to make that stand out. I'm going to make that kind of recede into the background. I'm going to remove that. I'm going to do this to the colors. It's good fun. There's, like I've touched on, there's global whole image editing, and then there's the specific, area specific, and you can see it. You can see the people that have taken the time, and it blows my mind how many don't. You can see how many have taken the time to go and do those local area specific adjustments to try and really direct our attention around the photo. So many apps that I talk about. There's Snapseed, Adobe Lightroom are my 2 favorites, and then there's others there. There's Pixlr, PixArt, Retouch, Afterfocus, Polar. It's now a subscription, but I still recommend it. It's still really good. So many different ones out there. Now, as much as I'm an advocate for editing every photo, I believe every photo needs to be edited. I don't like things that are overdone. My preference is a natural looking photo. It's got to be realistic. A sky that looks like it's on fire, yep, it's wow, it's fantastic. Does it look realistic? It can have that impact, but for me, in my personal preference, and that's where preferences come into the judging as well. Which is really, really interesting. So the next step is deciding placements, coming up with the feedback. So I've gone through and sorted my 3 lots, my favorites, least favorites, and in between. But every photo I go and give them a score, and I go and I make sure I record how I came up with that score, and then come up with a paragraph of feedback for each one, and why some areas might not have scored as well as they could have. Okay, does that make sense? So next, I'm looking at my notes here. Okay, my suggestions, here we go. Okay, so I'll provide one or two considerations. Okay, so considerations, they're not, this is what you should do. When you're judging, you have, because people are in a place of being vulnerability when you're giving them the feedback. They may have had bad experiences with people giving feedback, so we just have to be so careful. You have to be courteous and have them utmost respect when we're delivering it. Now there's, oh gosh, I did a whole unit of in my diploma of training, design and development. We did a whole unit on feedback. It's a massive topic. It's actually really hard to give quality feedback. So I'm very careful to say these are considerations, not necessarily suggestions on what they should or shouldn't do, because you may or may not agree. And it's not about that type of conversation. It's about just giving you the other things. It's all in good faith. So yeah, so the feedback always comes back to one of those. To be consistent and fair with my feedback, I can't just say, oh, you know what, that lighthouse with zoomed in lighthouse, which is the window, I don't get it. Like, you can't say, like, it might be a different genre that I don't understand, and you can be honest like that. But anyway, yeah. So delivering on the night. Well, let's get into that. So quite often the camera clubs will ask me to get in there for a little bit earlier to help set up the room and have a bit of a chat. Display equipment for the EDIs, for the electronic digital images. I always turn up with spare equipment just in case something's not working, and just make sure that yeah, everything, whenever I'm delivering it, it all can be done independent of any supplies that they've got there, because things let you down. All right. Okay. So sometimes it's a matter of reading the room and seeing what sort of reception you have when I first get there. Sometimes if I've got something where I've got a lot to say that's all positive, or something that I think is a common theme amongst everybody who handed in photos, I'll ask if that photographer is happy to identify themselves and have a chat and frame it. I have to pre-frame it first and then frame it and say, look, this photo here is a fantastic photo. It's a great example of some of the consistent feedback that I'm going to provide. So if the person who took this is willing, it would be great for all of us. But I understand. You can identify yourself, but just let me know if you don't want to have a chat about it. That's fine. I've got other examples I can use. That way, no one feels like they're being set up. Like I said, it's about being respectful and courteous. All right. So typically we have judges have 15-20 minutes. Because this is different to the presentation nights. This is a judging night, so quite often they'll give you 15-20 minutes just to introduce yourself and a bit of a credibility, just to say, this is why I'm here, this is what I do, this is what I bring. Yeah, so yeah, so that's pretty much it, I think. So yeah, I think that's it. I think that's really valuable. Just to recap, 5 different categories that I look for in a photo, and then I give them a points, a scoring, and that's to try and keep it as fair as I can. So those again were intention, composition, lighting, equipment, editing. Pretty much 3 points across the board, except equipment is only 2 points and editing is 4 points. And hopefully that goes some way to encouraging you to join a camera club or participate in a photo competition. Just be mindful which photo competitions you participate in, because some you pay for and you never hear anything from them again. But yeah, joining a community, joining a Facebook group like mine, the Smartphone Photography Club. It's a Facebook group. If you're on my email list or you've joined one of my programs, the most affordable one is the 14-day Photo Creativity Challenge. That's the most affordable one. You can get in there. And then when you do that and you join our club, we're kind of all speaking the same language. We all understand what these 5 different things that I'm talking about here. So with that said, thank you for joining me, and I will catch you next time.